Tonight, the role of Matthew Porter will be played by Matthew Porter. And this is a Drafthouse Diary for Thursday, February 23rd, when I went to the Alamo Drafthouse Sloan's Lake to see Emily. I've talked before about how I like biopics, especially biopics about any kind of artist. And this is a biopic about Emily Brontë, author of Wuthering Heights. It's written and directed by Frances O'Connor. It's her debut movie, and it stars Emma Mackey as Emily Brontë. And my policy about biopics is usually I want to take them on their own terms as movies, because in order to turn something into a good movie, you sometimes have to take liberties or choose to take liberties with literal historical fact. So I don't look to biopics as historical documents. I look to them to see, is this a good movie? I have a lot of trouble doing that with this because they went beyond taking liberties and just made up so much stuff that it was unnecessary to get wrong, so to speak, unnecessary to falsify for the sake of narrative. It's like this writer wanted to tell a particular kind of story about a particular stereotype of an artist and chose Emily Brontë as the canvas on which to paint this. Never mind the fact that there was already a really interesting story around Emily Brontë and her family, which was totally discarded for this. Now, I did have some prejudices going in. For example, I had a feeling that Charlotte Brontë was not going to be treated too well in this movie. I was kind of right about that. And that I was kind of bracing myself for because between you and me, Jane Eyre is a much, much better novel than Wuthering Heights. That is the hill. Well, it's not the hill on which I'll die. It's the hill from which I will cry out in forlorn Gothic anguish. But yeah, I was bracing myself for Charlotte Brontë not to be treated very well, and she wasn't. Emily Brontë was presented as this deeply troubled person racked with social anxiety disorders and self-medicating with opium and surrounded by people who couldn't possibly understand her, including her sisters, Charlotte and Anne. But eventually she somehow, through horrible, devastating romances with the handsome young curate at her father's church and the devastatingly failed attempts to go to the teaching college that her sister Charlotte went to. Eventually, she somehow manages to cobble together the will to create this brilliant work of art, Wuthering Heights, and then she dies. And her death inspires her sister to begin writing. I'm sorry, but Anne and Emily and Charlotte Brontë all started writing together. Charlotte Bronte's novel was published before any of them. Anne Bronte's first novel was published at the same time, I believe in the same volume as Wuthering Heights. The fact that they felt the need to make Emily Brontë such a figure of aloneness, it's a stereotype of the troubled artist. It's not that interesting. A story about sisterhood and different approaches to art by these three sisters who are pursuing the art of writing novels at the same time, each in her own way. That would have been an interesting story. That would have been a story that we don't get several times every year. So there were parts of Emily that were interesting to watch and that I enjoyed. The performances, by and large, were very good. But it was all in service of a story that was distractingly stereotypical, to use that term again. Just a story that we keep hearing and that this didn't make more interesting. And that was more frustrating because there was such a better story within reach. Other parts of the visit to the Alamo, the pre-show, there's not a lot to say about the pre-show. It was a generic one. And it was the same pre-show that I saw in front of Broker and in front of the brunch screening of It Happened One Night. So this, I think, is the first time I've seen the same pre-roll 3 times, and it was all within the same month. I mean, it was okay, but there's only so many times I need to see the same anime openings, the same animation of a dog roller skating, etc. The food, it was a repeat. I had the glazed and infused burger once again. I know that's on a limited time menu. I figure it's going to disappear soon. I had that before when I went to Littleton to see Mulholland Drive, and I wanted to try it one more time before it goes away, and I'm glad I did. That glazed and infused burger, it's got that little bit of sweetness from the glaze and the caramelized onions. It's very good. So I recommend that if you get a chance to try that and you haven't, it's good. The staff was really good, as they usually are at Sloan's Lake. And Sloan's Lake, the seating is not the most comfortable around, but it was fine. I've learned to sit in the back row, especially in the smaller auditoriums in Sloan's Lake, because you can actually lean back a little bit. There's a little more give to the seats than there are in other rows. Well, I hope you enjoyed this review. If you did, please consider clicking like down below. And if you want to hear more Drafthouse Diary reviews, consider clicking subscribe. But most important, thank you very much for watching. I'm glad you were here. I'll be back with more soon. And in the meantime, enjoy your movies. And when you do, stay till the end of the credits.